The valley was quiet now, but it was not the peace anyone wanted. Smoke drifted in the air, thick and heavy, making every breath taste like burnt metal. The ground was littered with the remains of machines and weapons, some of them still sparked, giving off faint light in the darkening sky. It had been a long battle. Many had fought, and many had fallen. Ryan moved slowly across the field. His boots sank into the mud with each step. He kept his rifle ready, though he knew the main fight was over. His orders were simple: search for any human survivors and call for pickup. But Ryan's eyes scanned more than just human bodies. Something inside him would not allow him to ignore anyone who might still be alive. A distant groan caught his attention. It was faint, almost lost in the sound of the wind. Ryan stopped and listened carefully. There it was again. It was not a human voice. It was deeper, rougher, and carried a strange tone he could not place. He followed the sound, stepping over broken armor and pieces of scorched earth. Then he saw it. A large figure lay half buried under a collapsed support beam from a wrecked transport craft. The armor was dark silver, marked with strange blue lines that still glowed faintly. It was a Virith warrior, one of the alien fighters who had stood against the humans for years. Its chest rose and fell slowly, its eyes, pale and bright, locked onto Ryan. As soon as he stepped closer, Ryan's heart pounded. Every soldier had been told the same thing: never get close to a wounded Virith. They were dangerous even when injured. Some were known to use their weakness as a trap, but this one did not move, only watched him in silence. Ryan's hand tightened on his rifle. He could walk away. He could call this in and let the cleanup teams deal with it. That was the safe thing to do. That was what everyone else would do. Yet something about the alien's gaze made him pause. There was no rage in those eyes, no threat, only exhaustion. He took a cautious step forward. The beam pinning the alien was heavy, twisted with metal shards. The ground around it was scorched black. Ryan could see the alien's legs under the wreckage. They were not moving at all. The armor there was cracked open, and underneath, the strange pale skin of the Virith was covered in dark stains. Ryan crouched a few feet away. "You can understand me?" he asked slowly. His voice was firm but calm. The alien blinked once, then gave the smallest nod. "You're hurt bad," Ryan said. He glanced at the beam. "If I move this, can you walk?" The alien's eyes flicked down toward its legs, then back up at Ryan. It shook its head once. That meant paralysis. Ryan had seen human soldiers with similar injuries before. Without help, this warrior would not last an hour in the cold wind. His radio crackled. A voice from his unit ordered all remaining soldiers to regroup at the North Ridge for extraction. Ryan looked back at the alien. The smart thing was to leave. This was the enemy. Saving it could get him into trouble, maybe even worse. But walking away felt wrong. The alien's breathing was slow, almost too slow. Its gaze never left his. Ryan imagined what it must feel like to be trapped under metal, unable to move, surrounded by enemies, and still alive enough to know the end was near. He made his choice. Ryan slung his rifle over his shoulder and stepped right up to the beam. "Don't move," he said, knowing the alien probably had no choice. He gripped the jagged metal, feeling the heat still radiating from it. With a grunt, he began to lift. The beam was heavier than he expected. His muscles screamed as he shifted his weight and pulled it just far enough for the alien to be free. The alien gasped sharply. Its arms twitched, trying to push itself up, but they gave out quickly. Ryan reached down and pulled the alien clear of the wreckage, dragging it to a small patch of open ground. For a moment, they both just breathed. The alien closed its eyes, its head tilting back against the dirt. Ryan scanned the area. The battlefield was still. Dangerous fires burned in the distance, and the sharp echo of gunfire sounded far away. They were not completely safe. He knelt beside the alien again. "I'm going to get you out of here," he said, though he knew it might be impossible. He did not even know if the alien wanted his help. The alien opened its eyes and studied him. Slowly, it moved one hand toward him, not fast, not an attack, but like a small gesture of trust. Ryan hesitated, then reached out and gripped the alien's forearm. The alien's skin felt cool through the cracked armor dot in that brief moment. Ryan understood something. War had made enemies of them. But here, in the mud and smoke, they were just two soldiers who had survived the same hell. The sound of approaching footsteps made him turn quickly. 3 human soldiers were coming from the ridge. When they saw the alien, their expressions hardened. "What are you doing, Ryan?" one of them demanded. "That's a Virith. Leave it. Orders are to regroup." Ryan stood slowly, placing himself between them and the alien. "It's injured. It can't fight. I'm not leaving it here." The second soldier shook his head. "You're crazy. That thing would kill you if it could." Ryan looked back at the alien, then at his fellow soldiers. "Maybe. But it didn't, and I'm not letting it die like this." The other 2 soldiers exchanged a look. Finally, one of them muttered, "Do what you want," and they turned away. Heading toward the ridge without him, Ryan exhaled slowly. He knelt beside the alien again. "Looks like it's just you and me now," he said. The alien's eyes softened, and for the first time, Ryan thought he saw a hint of gratitude there. The sky above was turning darker as night approached. Ryan knew they had to move soon. The battlefield was no place to stay, especially for someone who could not walk. He glanced at the alien's legs once more. This was not going to be easy, but Ryan had already made his choice. He adjusted the straps of his gear, got into position, and prepared to lift the alien onto his back. They were going to get out of here, no matter how far or how dangerous the path might be. Ryan adjusted the straps of his pack, feeling the weight of the alien's arm over his shoulder. The armor was cold against his uniform. The alien's breathing was slow but steady. Ryan could sense how heavy this burden would be, not just in weight, but in the decision he had made. The battlefield around them was quiet now, but the silence felt strange, like it was only waiting for trouble to return. In the distance, broken war machines lay tilted in the mud. The sky above was dim and streaked with orange from fires still burning across the valley. He began to move carefully, choosing a path between the larger pieces of wreckage. Every step made his boots sink into the wet ground. The alien's legs dragged behind, leaving 2 lines in the dirt. Ryan kept his rifle within reach, just in case. The alien tilted its head toward him slightly. "Why help?" The voice was low and rough, each word separated by a pause. Ryan glanced at him. "Because you're still alive," he said, "and I don't leave the living behind." The alien was silent for a moment, then gave a slow nod. A faint sound reached Ryan's ears, metal clanging somewhere ahead. He stopped and crouched low, pulling the alien down with him. The sound grew clearer. Shapes moved through the smoke, and Ryan recognized them instantly. Virith stragglers. Armed and searching the wreckage, Ryan's first thought was to avoid them. He didn't know if they would see him as an enemy or if they might try to reclaim the injured warrior. Either way, the risk was too high. He turned and began moving in the opposite direction, keeping low and using the remains of destroyed vehicles as cover. The alien's voice came again. Quieter this time. Left, safer. Ryan looked where the alien's hand pointed. The way led toward a half-collapsed trench line, barely visible under layers of smoke. "You know this area?" Ryan asked. The alien gave a single nod. Ryan trusted the guidance and headed left, slipping into the trench. The walls of dirt rose around them, cutting off the wind and muffling the sounds of the battlefield. It was a little safer here, but the path was narrow and filled with debris. He carried the alien slowly through the winding trench. Twice, he had to stop and catch his breath. The alien weighed more than any human soldier would, and the armor only added to it. Still, Ryan refused to put him down for long. The quiet was broken by sudden shouting behind them. Ryan froze. The voices were human. Soldiers from his side were moving through the trench, their footsteps quick. He knew what they would say if they saw him. Orders to leave the alien, maybe even to arrest him for disobeying. Ryan pulled the alien into a dark corner of the trench where a wall had caved in, creating a small pocket of cover. He pressed his back against the dirt and held his breath. The footsteps came closer. 2 human soldiers passed by without noticing, their boots sending small clumps of earth rolling down the trench walls. Ryan waited until the sound faded before moving again. We keep going, he whispered. The alien's breathing was growing more uneven. Ryan knew he had to get medical help soon, or it might be too late. But the extraction zone was still far away, and with both sides still searching the area, it was a dangerous path. The trench ended in a broken section of ground, opening back to the surface. Ryan climbed out first, then reached down to help the alien. He pulled him up and over, setting him gently on the ground before lifting him onto his back again. A sudden crack of energy fire split the air. A bolt hit the ground near Ryan's feet, sending dirt flying. He ducked and ran for cover behind a wrecked carrier. More shots followed. Ryan set the alien down carefully and aimed his rifle. Over the edge of the carrier, through the smoke, he spotted Tavirath soldiers firing from behind a ridge of rubble. He returned fire. Short bursts to keep their heads down. The alien behind him spoke again, the words slow but certain. They my clan not safe. Ryan glanced back. I figured, he said. We're moving again. When the enemy fire paused, Ryan used the moment to dash toward the next piece of cover, dragging the alien with him. They moved in short bursts from one wreck to another until the sound of the attackers faded. They reached a slope leading toward the edge of the battlefield. Ryan could see the outlines of hills in the distance, faint in the smoke, somewhere. Beyond those hills was the extraction point. The alien lifted a hand weakly, pointing toward a large structure half buried in the mud-crashed Viewership transport. Inside, safe, he said. Ryan studied the wreck. If the alien was right, it might provide shelter for the night. Moving through open ground now was too risky. And the transport might also have supplies he could use. He carried the alien inside through a bent hatch. The air inside smelled of burned metal and chemicals, but it was warmer than outside. Dim blue light glowed from strips along the walls, flickering now and then. Ryan set the alien down against the wall and checked his condition. You're losing strength, Ryan said. We rest here, then we keep moving. The alien met his eyes. Name Kale. He said slowly. Ryan nodded. Ryan. Kale gave a small, tired smile and expression that seemed strange on a Viewership face. But not unwelcome. Ryan searched the wreck for anything useful. He found a half-empty water container and gave some to Kale, who drank with slow, careful movements. Then Ryan sat with his back against the wall, rifle across his lap. For a while, they said nothing. Outside, the battlefield remained quiet, but Ryan knew that silence could break at any time. The war was officially over, but peace did not come instantly. In that stillness, Ryan thought about the moment he had found Kale under the beam. He thought about how easily he could have walked away, but he knew now that he would not have been able to live with that choice. He had chosen to help, even when no one else would. And now, whatever happened next, he was going to see it through. Night settled over the valley, and Ryan closed his eyes for a short rest. Tomorrow, they would face the hardest part, crossing enemy territory to reach safety. Ryan woke before sunrise. The faint blue light inside the crashed transport was still flickering, but outside, the battlefield had turned pale with the first light of morning. The air was colder now. A thin mist curled along the ground, hiding shapes in the distance. Kale was still awake, leaning against the wall. His breathing was steady, but weaker than yesterday. Ryan could see the strain in his face. We have to move, Ryan said quietly. The longer we stay, the more dangerous it gets. Kale gave a slow nod. Go east, he said, pointing toward the far side of the wreck. Less patrol. Ryan checked his rifle, tightened the straps on his pack, and helped Kale onto his back. The weight was as heavy as before, but Ryan had grown used to it. His legs adjusted to the slow, steady pace needed to keep Kale balanced. They left the wreck and moved through the mist. The soft ground muffled their footsteps, but every sound around them made Ryan's senses sharpen. A distant metallic crash, a faint hum in the air. The war might have ended, but the battlefield was far from empty. After half an hour, they reached a long ridge of collapsed stone and metal. Ryan decided to climb it for a better view. He set Kale down in the shelter of a broken slab and crawled to the top. From there, he could see the valley stretching out toward the east. The extraction zone was still several kilometers away, past open fields and scattered wrecks. But what worried him most was movement. Groups of soldiers, both human and Virith, were scattered across the area, some collecting supplies, others searching for survivors. None of them would take kindly to seeing Ryan with an injured alien. Ryan slid back down to Kel. "We'll have to go around. Too many eyes ahead." Kel's head tilted slightly. "Danger from north," he said, pointing toward a patch of smoke rising beyond the ridge. Ryan trusted Kel's warning and guided them south instead. For a while, they made good progress, weaving between broken vehicles and large craters. The mist thinned as the sun climbed higher, making it harder to stay hidden. They were halfway across a wide stretch of open ground when Ryan heard the sound sharp, fast, and close. Energy fire tore into the dirt near his feet, sending a spray of soil into the air. He dropped to one knee, pulling Kale down behind the remains of a small barricade. More shots followed, sizzling past them. Ryan peeked over the edge and saw 3 Virith soldiers on a ridge, weapons raised. They had spotted him, and they were closing in. "They think I'm taking you as prisoner," Ryan guessed aloud. "Or maybe they think you're already dead." Kel's breathing quickened. "Clan soldiers," he said, "not friendly." Ryan fired a short burst to keep them back, then shifted positions. He had to get Kale out of the open. He spotted a low trench about 20 meters away, partially hidden by a pile of broken armor plating. "When I move, we run," Ryan said firmly. "Stay low." He fired again, forcing the Virith to duck, then grabbed Kale under the arms and half dragged, half carried him toward the trench. Shots followed them, one striking the armor plate on Kel's shoulder with a loud crack. They slid down into the trench just as another blast struck the ground where they had been moments earlier. Ryan crouched low, checking Kale for injuries. The armor had taken the hit, but the impact had knocked the breath out of him. "We can't stay here," Ryan said. "They'll come around." Kale pointed ahead. "Old bunker, near riverbed." Ryan followed his gesture. The riverbed was dry now, just a long stretch of cracked earth winding between hills. If they could reach the bunker, they might be able to hold out until things calmed. The trench led part of the way, offering cover from the ridge. But soon it ended, forcing them into the open again. Ryan kept moving quickly, staying alert. The sound of footsteps came from behind fast, closing in. A shadow moved to his right. Ryan turned and fired without hesitation, sending the figure diving for cover. Another shot whizzed past his head. The air was filled with the high-pitched hum of energy weapons. Ryan pushed forward, his muscles burning from the effort of carrying Kale. At last, he spotted the bunker half buried in dirt, its metal door hanging loose on one hinge. He made for it, kicking the door the rest of the way open and slipping inside. The interior was dark and dusty, with broken equipment scattered across the floor. Ryan set Kale down against the wall and positioned himself near the doorway, rifle ready. The enemy would come soon. Kale's voice was calm despite his condition. 2, maybe 3, he said. "Coming." Ryan nodded. He could hear them now, footsteps crunching on the dry ground outside. He took a deep breath and waited. The first shadow appeared in the doorway. Ryan fired a controlled burst, hitting the metal beside the soldier's head and forcing him back. Another tried to rush in from the side, but Ryan swung around and fired again, driving them away for several minutes. It was a game of movement and noise, the enemy testing the entrance, Ryan pushing them back. Finally, the sound of retreat came. Ryan stayed in position, waiting until he was sure they were gone. He turned back to Kale, who was watching him closely. "You fight like you've done this too many times," Kale said. Ryan allowed himself a small smile. "You could say that." Kale's eyes softened. "You risk much for me." Ryan shrugged. "You'd do the same if our positions were reversed, right?" Kale didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, he said, "Yes." Ryan glanced toward the open doorway, the sunlight spilling in. They had survived the attack, but they were still far from safety. He knew the journey ahead would be harder. The enemy had seen them now. Both humans and Virith might try to stop them still. Ryan was not turning back. He had made his choice on the battlefield when no one else would, and he would see it through. He helped Kale up again, steadying him. Let's keep moving. The extraction zone isn't going to come to us. With the sun climbing higher and the danger close behind, they left the bunker and set their course toward the hills. The hardest part was still ahead. The sun was high now, casting long shadows across the broken land. Heat shimmered over the cracked ground as Ryan and Kale made their way toward the distant hills. The air smelled faintly of ash, and every step stirred up a fine layer of dust. That clung to Ryan's boots. Kale's weight pressed against his back, and Ryan could feel the slow rise and fall of the alien's breathing. It had grown shallower over the past hour. He knew Kale was running out of strength. They stopped in the shade of a fallen transport wing. Ryan lowered Kale gently to the ground, then knelt beside him. "You need water," he said. Pulling the half-empty container from his pack, Kale drank slowly, his pale eyes watching Ryan over the rim. When he finished, he handed the container back and rested his head against the cool metal behind him. Ryan sat beside him for a moment, listening to the distant echo of machinery. Somewhere out there, both humans and Virith were still combing the battlefield. They had to keep moving, but the heat made it dangerous to rush. "You said before that those soldiers chasing us were from your clan," Ryan said. "Why would they try to kill you?" Kale's voice was low, each word measured. "I disobeyed order. Refused to attack human camp." Ryan turned to look at him. "You refused. Why?" Kale's gaze drifted to the dusty horizon. "There were children, not fighters. My commander said all must fall. I said no." He paused, his eyes narrowing as if remembering the moment. "After that, I was enemy to my own." Ryan absorbed the words in silence. It was strange to think of a Virith choosing mercy in the middle of war. But he realized it made sense now why Kale's eyes had held no hate when they first met. "Guess we have something in common," Ryan said finally. "We both broke rules to save someone." Kale gave a faint nod, then glanced at Ryan's arm. "Why you save me? We are enemies." Ryan thought about it. "Because you were alive, and you weren't trying to kill me." That was enough. For a moment, they just sat there in the quiet shade. The sound of the wind moving through the wreckage was the only thing breaking the stillness. Ryan stood, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. "We need to move before someone finds us here." Kale shifted his weight, letting Ryan lift him again. Once Ryan was sure the alien was secure, they set out toward the hills. The terrain changed as they moved. The flat, open battlefield gave way to uneven ground littered with jagged rocks and small ridges. This made it easier to find cover, but also harder to carry Kale. Ryan's arms and back ached, yet he pushed on, focusing only on the next few steps. As they crossed a narrow ravine, Kale suddenly raised a hand. "Stop!" Ryan froze. "What is it?" Kale pointed to a spot on the ground ahead. "Mine," he said. Ryan narrowed his eyes. Now that he looked closely, he could see a small metal disc half buried in the dirt. If he had stepped there, the explosion would have ended their journey instantly. "You've been through here before?" Ryan asked. Kale nodded. "Before battle, we set many traps." Ryan adjusted their path, stepping carefully around the area. It made him realize just how dangerous the journey was. Without Kale's knowledge, he might have walked right into danger without knowing it. They continued moving until they reached the edge of a dry riverbed. The cracked earth stretched in both directions. Ryan could see marks in the dirt signs. "That patrols had passed through here recently." "Fast," Kale said quietly. Ryan crossed quickly, his eyes scanning the ridges above for movement. Once they were on the other side, they moved into the shelter of low hills. The air here was cooler, and the sounds of the battlefield seemed far away. They stopped again, this time under the shadow of a tall rock formation. Ryan set Kale down and took a long drink from the water container before passing it over. Kale drank, then studied Ryan for a moment. "You are strong," he said. Ryan smirked slightly. "Carrying you this far, I better be." Kale tilted his head. "Not just body strong and choice." Ryan didn't answer right away. He looked toward the hills, where the sky met the jagged outline of rock. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just stubborn." Kale's pale eyes didn't leave him. Strong and stubborn. Good for survival. They both heard it at the same time, a distant hum growing louder. Ryan instantly moved to the edge of the rock to look. A human patrol drone floated slowly between the hills. Scanning the ground with a thin beam of blue light, Ryan's heart pounded. If the drone saw Kale, it would alert the soldiers instantly. There would be no chance to explain. He quickly pulled Kale deeper into the shadows, crouching low. The hum grew louder. The light sweeping across the rocks. For a moment, it passed. Close enough that Ryan could feel the vibration through the ground. Then, after a tense few seconds, the sound began to fade. They stayed still until it was gone completely. Ryan exhaled slowly. That was close. Kale's expression was calm, but Ryan could see the faint relief in his eyes. We go now, Kale said. They moved again, sticking to the shadows between rocks. By late afternoon, they had reached a small cave hidden in the side of a hill. It was barely large enough for the two of them, but it provided shelter and a good view of the valley below. Ryan set Kale down and started a small, smokeless heat source from his pack. The warmth spread through the cave, taking the edge off the evening chill. As the light faded outside, Ryan and Kale shared a quiet meal from Ryan's rations. The alien ate slowly, clearly unused to human food, but did not complain. Ryan leaned back against the rock wall. If we make it to the extraction zone tomorrow, I can get you to medical help. Kale's voice was steady. And then, your leaders will not want me to live. Ryan didn't deny it. Maybe not, but I'll fight for you to get that chance. Kale studied him in the dim light. You are different from other soldiers I met. Ryan looked back at him. And you're different from what I was told about your people. For a moment, there was a quiet understanding between them. The war had made them enemies, but here, in the fading light of the cave, they were something else to soldiers bound by a choice no one else would make. Outside, the night deepened. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, but for now, they rested. Their unlikely alliance stronger than it had been the day before. Morning came quietly, with a pale light spilling into the small cave. Ryan woke to the sound of wind moving through the hills. The air was cooler now, but the scent of dust and burnt metal still clung to everything. Kale was already awake, his pale eyes fixed on the valley below. He spoke in a low voice. Many soldiers today. Patrols from both sides. Ryan joined him at the cave's mouth, scanning the distance. He could see movement far off, small figures moving between wrecks, sometimes flashing with the light of weapons or gear. The extraction zone was still beyond those patrols. If they wanted to reach it, they would have to pass through the most dangerous part of the battlefield. Ryan checked his supplies. Water was almost gone. Ammunition was limited. Carrying Kale meant moving slower, and they would not be able to outrun anyone for long. We have to keep to the shadows, Ryan said. No open ground unless we have no choice. Kale nodded. I will guide you where I can. I know some safe ways. Ryan lifted Kale onto his back, adjusting the straps so the weight was balanced. They set out from the cave, moving along narrow paths between rocks. The morning light was sharp, cutting long lines of shadow across the ground. Ryan kept to these shadows, making their movements harder to see from a distance. The first hour passed without trouble. They stayed low, listening for the hum of drones or the heavy steps of soldiers. Several times Kale tapped Ryan's arm, pointing out areas to avoid hidden mines, unstable ground, or patrol routes only he seemed to know. But soon, their luck began to change. They reached the edge of a long stretch of open ground where the hills fell away into a flat basin. In the center of the basin was the wreckage of a massive transport craft, its broken hull casting a jagged shadow. Ryan wanted to go around it, but Kale shook his head. Too far, Kale said. Patrols will find us if we go wide. We cross now, use wreck for cover. Ryan didn't like it, but there was no better choice. He adjusted his grip on Kale and began moving quickly toward the wreck. The ground here was dusty and scattered with scraps of metal that clinked softly under his boots. They were halfway across when Ryan froze. A faint clicking sound echoed through the basin. He knew that sound. Virith. Motion sensors. His eyes scanned the wreck ahead and saw the small, dish-shaped devices fixed to the metal. Kale. Ryan whispered, "This place is trapped." Before Kale could answer, a loud metallic voice rang out in the alien tongue, sharp and commanding. Figures appeared from behind the wreck, 3 Virith soldiers in full armor, weapons raised. Ryan ducked behind a low piece of broken hull, setting Kel down beside him. "Friends of yours?" he asked. Kel's expression was grim. "No, hunters." The first shots came fast. Bolts of energy striking the ground around them, Ryan returned fire, forcing the soldiers to spread out. He knew he couldn't hold them off for long. "We have to move," Ryan said. "Any way around them?" Kel looked toward the far end of the wreck, a small tunnel for repair crew. "Leads to other side." Ryan didn't waste time. He pulled Kel onto his back again and sprinted toward the tunnel entrance. Shots followed them, one striking the metal just above Ryan's head with a sharp hiss. They reached the tunnel, a narrow, dark opening in the wreck's side. Ryan ducked inside, the walls pressing close on either side. The air was thick with the smell of rust and burned fuel. Behind them, the shouts of the Virith soldiers echoed closer. Ryan moved as fast as he could in the cramped space, ducking under hanging wires and stepping over fallen panels. At last, a faint light appeared ahead. They emerged into the open on the far side of the wreck, the basin stretching out behind them. Kel pointed toward a narrow canyon ahead. "Safe there, hard to follow." Ryan started toward it, but the sound of heavy boots made him glance back. The Virith soldiers had found the tunnel exit and were already emerging. Ryan turned and fired a few shots to slow them down, then pushed himself harder. They reached the mouth of the canyon just as a burst of energy fire hit the ground nearby, showering them with dirt. Ryan ducked into the canyon, the tall rock walls rising on either side. The sound of pursuit faded as they moved deeper inside. The canyon twisted and narrowed, sometimes forcing Ryan to squeeze through gaps between the rocks. The shadows here were deep and the air cooler. After several minutes, they stopped to rest in a small hollow. Ryan set Kel down carefully. "We can't keep this pace all day," he said, breathing heavily. Kel studied him. "You are tired. You carry much weight." Ryan gave a tired smile. "Not much choice. Unless you plan on walking." Kel's mouth curved slightly in what might have been a small smile. "Not today." They shared the last of the water, each taking only a small sip. Ryan checked the sky through a narrow gap in the rocks. The sun was past its peak now, and shadows were lengthening. "We'll move again at dusk," Ryan said. "Less chance of being seen." Kel nodded. "And if soldiers find us?" Ryan looked him in the eye. "Then we fight." The evening came slowly, the light turning gold before fading into deep blue. Ryan lifted Kel once more, his muscles aching but his resolve unchanged. They continued through the canyon until it opened into a wide, stony plain dot far on the horizon. Ryan could see the faint glint of structures, the edge of the extraction zone. It was still far, but closer than they had ever been. He tightened his grip on Kel and started forward. No matter what waited ahead, they were going to reach it. The stony plain stretched endlessly before them. Ryan moved at a steady pace. Kel's weight heavy on his back, each step sending a dull ache through his legs. The cold of night was starting to creep in, the wind carrying the sharp scent of metal and burnt soil dot above. The stars were coming out, faint and cold. Ryan kept his eyes on the faint glint ahead, the promise of safety. The extraction zone was close now. He could almost imagine the sound of engines warming, ready to take them far from this war-torn land. Kel's voice broke the silence. "You think they will welcome me?" Ryan didn't answer right away. He knew the truth. Most humans saw Kel's kind only as enemies. "They'll have to," he said finally. "You're with me. That will count for something." Kel made a quiet sound that might have been doubt, but he didn't argue. They walked for another hour before they saw movement, tall watchtowers rising from the plain, with light sweeping across the ground. The human base was surrounded by a fence of high metal and strong shields, designed to keep the war out. As Ryan approached, a deep voice called out from the nearest tower. "Identify yourself." "Corporal Ryan Hale," Ryan called back. "Survivor from Unit Delta 9. I'm carrying a wounded ally. Request immediate entry." The searchlights focused on him, bright and blinding. Ryan stopped, shielding his eyes. A pause followed. Then a voice, sharper now. "The one you're carrying, Virith?" Ryan tightened his jaw. Yes, but he's not a threat. He's injured. He needs medical help. Another long silence. Then, stand by. Minutes passed before a group of soldiers approached from the gate, weapons ready. Their leader was a tall officer with a hard face, Captain Drew. His eyes went from Ryan to Kel. Narrowing, you brought an enemy here, Drew said. I brought someone who saved my life. Ryan replied firmly, he's hurt. He can't fight. He deserves help. Drew's voice was cold. Our orders are clear, no enemy combatants inside. Not alive. Ryan felt Kel shift slightly on his back, hearing every word. Ryan stepped forward, then changed the order. You know me, Captain. I've fought for 3 years without questioning command, but I won't leave him out here to die. Drew's gaze hardened. This isn't your choice, Corporal. Step away from the alien and you can come in. Ryan didn't move. If you want him gone, you'll have to go through me. The soldiers raised their weapons. The tension in the air was like a drawn bowstring. Kel's voice came low and steady in Ryan's ear. You do not have to do this. Let me go. You will be safe. Ryan shook his head. Safe doesn't mean right. Drew took a step closer. You're risking your career for something that isn't even human. Ryan met his eyes. I'm risking it for someone who fought. Beside me, you don't get to decide his worth because of what he is. For a moment, no one spoke. The wind whistled softly through the fence. Then Drew gave a sharp signal. Two soldiers moved forward, trying to take Kel. Ryan stepped back quickly, his hand resting on his sidearm. Don't, Ryan warned. One of the soldiers hesitated. The other didn't, stepping closer. Ryan's voice turned sharp. I said, don't. The soldier froze, glancing at Drew. The captain's face was unreadable. You're making a mistake, Drew said. Maybe, Ryan answered, but I'll live with it. If you're going to turn us away, then open the gate just enough for me to pass through with him and you won't see us again. Drew's jaw tightened. He looked at Ryan for a long time, measuring something in his eyes. Then, unexpectedly, he signaled for the others to lower their weapons. You're on your own responsibility. Drew said, you get him in, you keep him under watch. If anything happens, it's on you. Ryan nodded once. I'll take it. The gate opened with a slow metallic groan. Ryan carried Kel through, feeling the sudden warmth of lights and hearing the hum of machines. The camp smelled of fuel and cooked ration civilization after days of dust and fear. Inside. A few soldiers stared as they passed. Some whispered. Others simply looked away. Ryan ignored them all, heading straight for the medical station. The medic on duty, a short woman named Harris, looked up in surprise. He's hurt, Ryan interrupted. Badly. Help him? Harris hesitated only a moment before setting to work. Kel was eased onto a cot, his breathing slow but steady. The medbay lights cast a pale glow over his scaled skin, showing the marks of battle. Ryan stayed close, watching as Harris worked. For the first time in days, he felt a small weight lift from his shoulders. Kel was safe at least for now. Kel's eyes found his. You did not have to fight for me. Ryan gave a small smile. Yeah, I did. Outside. The camp continued its work, the war still raging beyond its walls. But inside that small room, there was a fragile piece of human soldier and an alien warrior, bound not by orders, but by choice. The medbay was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Ryan sat in a chair beside Kel's bed, arms crossed, eyes half closed. He hadn't slept properly in days, but he refused to leave. Kel's breathing was slow and steady now. The deep wound in his side had been clean and sealed. His legs, still unresponsive, were wrapped in support braces. He was alive, but his body carried the mark of the battlefield. Outside the medbay, Ryan could hear muffled voices. Soldiers were talking about him, about Kel, about the captain's decision to let them in. Not everyone agreed with it. The door opened and Captain Drew stepped inside. His boots clicked on the metal floor as he stopped near Ryan. You know what's coming, Drew said in a low voice. Ryan looked up. Court-martial. Possibly, Drew replied. Command won't like this. They've been clear about enemy contact. You broke the rule. I saved a life, Ryan said simply. Drew's eyes were hard. but not without a trace of respect. You also put this camp in a difficult position. You'll have to answer for that. Cale stirred slightly, opening his eyes. His gaze moved from Ryan to Drew. If your leaders wish me gone, I will go, Cale said. His voice quiet but steady. No, Ryan said quickly. You're not in any condition to travel. Drew folded his arms. The truth is, there's a way out of this for both of you. But it's not easy. Ryan frowned. Go on. Command doesn't care about mercy, Drew said, but they do care about intelligence. If your friend here can provide useful information routes, supply points, enemy numbers, they might overlook your actions. Cale was silent for a long moment. You want me to betray my people? It's not betrayal if it ends the war sooner, Drew said. Cale's eyes darkened. That depends on which side you stand on. Ryan could feel the tension building. Again, he knew Cale had no reason to trust the humans, not after what he had seen in this war. But he also knew that without some kind of agreement, Cale's life would be in danger even inside the camp. Cale, Ryan said quietly, I'm not asking you to hurt your people, but if there's anything at all that can help, stop this fighting. Maybe it's worth sharing. Cale studied Ryan's face, searching for the truth behind his words. At last, he said, I will think about it. Drew gave a short nod. You have one day. After that, command will decide without your input. When Drew left, the room felt smaller, the air heavier. Ryan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. You don't owe them everything, he said. You don't owe them anything. But I want you alive. If there's a way to make that happen without putting a target on your back, we'll take it. Cale was quiet for a long time. Finally, he asked, Why do you fight for me? Ryan looked at him. Because you fought for me first. That's reason enough. Night passed slowly. The medbay lights dimmed, and the hum of the machines became almost like a lullaby. Ryan stayed by Cale's side, drifting in and out of shallow. Sleep died at dawn. Cale spoke again. I have decided, he said. I will not give them what can harm my people, but I will give them what can save lives, yours and mine. I will share the location of a neutral zone. No one fights there. If both sides agree to meet, maybe the killing can end. Ryan felt a spark of hope. That might work. Later that morning, Drew returned. Cale told him about the neutral zone, explaining its location and the old treaty that protected it. Drew listened carefully, his expression unreadable. This could be useful, Drew said at last. If it's real, it is real, Cale said, but it will only work if your leaders treat it with respect. Drew nodded slowly. I'll send the message. Hours later, word came back from command. They were willing to send a small delegation to the neutral zone under Ryan's escort. With Cale present as proof of good faith, it was risky. If either side broke the peace, there would be no second chance. That evening, Ryan helped Cale into a transport vehicle. The alien warrior still couldn't walk, but his presence carried a quiet strength. Soldiers watched them leave the camp, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. The journey to the neutral zone was tense. The sky was overcast, and the land between the camps felt like a place that had forgotten peace ever existed. When they arrived, Ryan saw the faint outline of stone pillars rising from the ground, marking the ancient meeting place. On the far side, Cale's people were already there, proud figures with sharp eyes, watching closely. Ryan pushed Cale's chair forward until they stopped in the center. Silence hung in the air. Then Cale spoke, his voice carrying across the space. This war has taken enough from both sides, he said. I stand here because a human refused to leave me behind. That is proof enough that not all enemies are enemies forever. One of the alien leaders stepped forward. And you, human soldier, why are you here? Ryan met his gaze. Because I believe we can stop fighting. Because I believe saving one life is worth more than taking 100. The words hung in the air. Then, slowly, the alien leader extended his hand not in surrender, but in respect. Ryan shook it. It was not the end of the war that day, but it was the start of something new. A line that, once crossed, could lead to peace. Back at the transport, as they prepared to leave, Cale looked at Ryan. You may have just changed the path of our worlds, he said. Ryan smiled faintly. One step at a time, the engines rumbled to life. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, both men, human and alien, could see a future where they were no longer enemies.